I'll never forget the exact moment my boss whispered those words to me in a grocery store on a random Thursday night. Be my partner or lose your job. My hands went numb, and I almost dropped the bag of apples I was holding. Victoria Hayes, my CEO, the woman who made millionaires nervous during meetings, was gripping my arm like her life depended on it. And the strangest part? She looked scared. Actually scared. I'm Lucas Bennett, 27 years old, and I work as a financial analyst at Hayes Investment Group in Seattle. Nothing about my life was special. I paid bills, showed up early to work, sometimes forgot to buy laundry detergent, and ate too much takeout. 2 years ago, getting hired at this company felt like winning the lottery. But standing in aisle 7 of Martin's grocery, everything I thought I understood suddenly made no sense. Victoria wasn't just my boss. She was the kind of person you read about in business magazines. People twice her age stumbled over their words when she asked questions. Men in $1,000 suits avoided eye contact when she walked into rooms. She'd built her company from scratch after her father's firm collapsed, turning it into one of the most respected investment houses on the West Coast. Everyone called her the Steel Rose, beautiful but untouchable. Yet right there, surrounded by cereal boxes and bread displays, she didn't look powerful at all. She looked like someone trying not to fall apart. "Don't turn around," she said quietly. "Just hold my hand and smile like we're together." Her fingers were cold and shaking. I did what she asked because honestly, what else could I do? That's when I saw him. A tall man in an expensive jacket pushing a shopping cart toward us, laughing with a woman who couldn't have been older than 25. She had her arm wrapped around his, leaning into him like he was the center of her universe. Victoria's grip on my arm got tighter. I realized this must be him, the ex-fiancé I'd heard whispers about. The man who'd left her for someone younger right before their wedding 3 years ago. Everything suddenly made sense. So I played along. I put my arm around her waist and pulled her closer, trying to look natural. "Hey, darling," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Did you find the pasta you wanted?" She blinked at me, surprised, then nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "I did." For just a second, I thought I saw her smile. A real smile, not the professional one she used at work. The ex-fiancé slowed down when he saw us, his eyes narrowing. He gave us this look, the kind someone gives when they think they know something you don't. The young woman with him waved, overly friendly, like she was trying too hard. Victoria leaned into me, her head resting against my shoulder. "Keep walking," she whispered. "Please." So we did. We walked right past them, her perfume filling my senses, something that reminded me of lavender and clean cotton. I could feel her heartbeat through her jacket, fast and unsteady. And even though I knew this was all fake, some part of me wished it wasn't. When we finally made it outside to the parking lot, she let go of my arm and took a deep breath. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stood there, still trying to process what just happened. "So you're not actually firing me?" For the first time since I'd known her, Victoria laughed. Not the polite, controlled laugh she used at company events, but a real one. "No," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Not tonight." The silence that followed felt strange, heavy, like something invisible had shifted between us. She looked at me for a long moment, her lips parting like she wanted to say something else. But then she stopped herself. "Forget this happened," she said quietly. "See you at the office, Mr. Bennett." And just like that, she walked to her car. I watched her taillights fade into the Seattle drizzle, standing there with my forgotten groceries still in hand. I should have just gone home and moved on, but I couldn't, because when she held my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Something real, something that scared me. I didn't know it yet, but that moment in the grocery store was the start of something I'd never be able to walk away from. The next day, I expected everything to go back to normal. I wanted it to, but when I walked into the office, I couldn't stop thinking about the way her voice had cracked when she said please. The way she'd trusted me to help her when she could have asked anyone. Victoria walked past my desk around 9, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me at all. She wore her usual perfectly tailored suit, her expression calm and unreadable. It was like the night before had been erased from existence. I told myself to let it go, to focus on my work. But every time I heard her voice in a meeting or saw her walk by, my mind went back to that grocery store, to the way she'd held on to me like I was the only solid thing in her world. Around 11 in the morning, an email popped up on my screen. My office. Now, my stomach dropped. I walked down the hall, past cubicles where coworkers typed away, completely unaware that my life felt like it was hanging by a thread. When I stepped inside, Victoria was standing by the window, arms crossed, staring out at Puget Sound. The city spread out below us, all gray skies and glittering water. "Close the door," she said without turning around. I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she finally turned to face me, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it at work. "You handled yourself well last night," she said. "Thank you." I nodded, unsure what to say. "I'm still not really sure what happened." She walked to her desk, her fingers tracing the edge of it. "My ex-fiancé doesn't need to know I'm still single. That's all." "So it was just about him?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyebrow raised slightly. "You ask a lot of questions for someone whose job security depends on me." I almost laughed, but then she smiled. "Just a little. Relax. You're safe." She sat on the edge of her desk, looking at me in a way that made my pulse quicken. "Actually, there's something else I need to ask you." My gut tightened. "Another grocery store situation?" "Not exactly," she said. "The annual investor summit is next week. Our board wants to see that I'm not just focused on work. My public relations team thinks I should bring someone. Partner." She paused. "After last night, I think you're the right person." I stared at her, trying to understand. "You want me to pretend again?" "Yes," she said simply. "One evening. Dinner, photos, small talk. You'll look charming. I'll look balanced. Everyone benefits. And if I say no?" She leaned forward slightly. "You won't." She was right. I didn't say no. Over the next week, my life became something out of a movie I never auditioned for. There were appointments for a custom tuxedo, rehearsals for how to answer questions from reporters, and strategies for looking natural in photos. Somewhere between all the planning and late-night phone calls going over details, I started seeing a different side of Victoria. She hummed jazz songs quietly when she thought no one was listening. She checked the weather forecast before her assistant left for the day, making sure the young woman had an umbrella if rain was coming. She smiled at dogs tied up outside coffee shops. The more time we spent together, the harder it became to remember this was all an act. On the night of the summit, I stood in the hotel lobby adjusting my bow tie for the 10th time. Then I looked up and saw her. Victoria descended the curved staircase wearing a midnight blue gown that caught the light with every step. Her hair was styled differently, softer somehow, falling in waves over her shoulders. She looked like someone from another world. "You're staring," she said quietly when she reached me. "You'll make it obvious." "Too late," I said. Her hand brushed my arm, just lightly enough to send electricity through me. Cameras flashed as we entered the ballroom together. To everyone watching, we looked like the perfect couple. Successful, confident, connected. But when the music started and she leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear, I realized I didn't want this to end. During dinner, I caught her looking at me. Not the quick professional glance she used at work, but something deeper, something uncertain. When she raised her glass for a toast, her hand found mine under the table. Neither of us pulled away. Hours passed like minutes. We talked to investors, posed for photos, and played our parts perfectly. But in the quiet moments between conversations, when it was just us standing together, everything felt real. Later that night, after most people had left, I walked her through the hotel gardens. String lights hung overhead, casting everything in a soft glow. "You did great tonight," she said. "So did you," I replied. She stopped walking and turned to face me. "Remember what I said before? About keeping distance?" "Yeah." "Forget it," she whispered. "At least for tonight." Then she kissed me. It wasn't long or dramatic. It was quick, gentle, and over before I could fully process it. But it was real. By the time I opened my eyes, She was already walking toward the parking garage, leaving me standing under the lights, completely sure of one thing. This wasn't a game anymore. I walked back to my car in a daze, my mind racing. The rain had started again, light and steady, the kind that makes everything look softer. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time just thinking about her smile, about the way she'd looked at me during dinner, about that kiss. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The photo showed up on Monday, and it destroyed everything in less than an hour. I was sitting at my desk reviewing quarterly reports when Derek from accounting walked past and gave me this strange look, half smirk, half pity. Then my phone buzzed. Someone had sent me a link. It was a photo of Victoria and me leaving the office together Friday night, standing close, her hand on my arm. The angle made it look like more than it was, or maybe exactly what it was. My chest tightened. Within minutes, the whispers started. People glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Conversations stopped when I walked to the coffee machine. Sarah from marketing actually moved to a different table when I sat down for lunch. By 2 o'clock, I got an email from Human Resources, Conference Room B. Immediately, when I walked in, Victoria was already there, sitting at the head of the table with her hands folded, staring at nothing. She didn't look at me when I entered, didn't acknowledge me at all. The HR director, a woman named Patricia with gray hair and tired eyes, gestured for me to sit. Mr. Bennett, given recent circumstances, the company has decided to place you on administrative leave while we conduct an investigation. My throat went dry. An investigation into what? Patricia slid a folder across the table. There are concerns about inappropriate workplace relationships. We need to ensure company policy hasn't been violated. I looked at Victoria, waiting for her to say something, anything, but she just sat there, her face blank, like I was a stranger. You could defend me, I said quietly. She finally met my eyes, and something flickered there. Pain, maybe, or fear. But she said nothing. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. I was told to collect my things and leave the building. Just like that, 2 years of work, gone. As everyone filed out, I waited until only Victoria and I remained. You could have said something, I told her. She stood slowly, turning to face me. And for the first time, I saw cracks in her armor. Do you think this is easy? She whispered. They wanted to fire you permanently. I had to make a choice. So you chose yourself, I said. No, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I chose to keep you safe. You just don't see it yet. I left the building that afternoon carrying a box of my belongings, feeling like everyone was watching me. The city felt different as I drove home. Colder, more distant. I stopped by my mother's apartment on the way. She'd been sick for months, lung problems that kept getting worse. But when she saw me, she smiled anyway. You look terrible, sweetheart, she said. I laughed despite everything. Thanks, Mom. We sat together on her worn couch, the kind that's been in the family for decades. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just held my hand the way she used to when I was little and had bad dreams. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone to sit with you while your world falls apart. Days turned into weeks. No calls from Victoria. No messages. Nothing. I tried to distract myself with freelance work, helping small businesses with their finances from my laptop. But no matter what I did, she was there. In every song on the radio, in every coffee shop we'd never been to together, in the empty spaces of my apartment. One afternoon, I went to the cafe near my old office. Sophie worked there, a barista who'd been my friend since college. She took one look at me and shook her head. You look like someone ran you over, she said, pouring me coffee. Corporate politics, I muttered. She leaned on the counter, lowering her voice. You know she fought for you, right? I frowned. What are you talking about? Victoria. Word is the board wanted you gone permanently. She went head to head with the chairman. Told them she'd quit before letting them destroy your career. The cup nearly slipped from my hands. She did that? She did more than that, Sophie said. She actually walked out yesterday, gave up her position, turned in her resignation and left. I just sat there, unable to breathe. The woman who'd built her entire life around that company had given it all up. For me, that night I couldn't sit still. I walked through the city for hours, rain soaking through my jacket. Every step brought back memories. Her laugh at the summit, the way she'd held my hand in the grocery store, how her voice had broken when she said I didn't see what she was doing. I finally understood. She hadn't abandoned me. She'd sacrificed everything to protect me, even if it meant I'd hate her for it. I decided I had to find her. I called her office the next day, but her assistant said she'd already cleared out. No forwarding information, no contact number. She was just gone. I tried her apartment building, but the doorman said she'd moved out over the weekend. It was like she'd vanished completely. That evening, I ended up back at Martin's Grocery, the same store where this all started. I don't know why I went there. Maybe I thought fate owed us something. Maybe I was just desperate. The store was quiet, just a few people shopping for dinner. I walked down the aisles slowly, remembering. Aisle 7, where she'd first grabbed my arm. The wine section, where she'd been standing when I noticed how scared she looked. The parking lot where she'd laughed for real. I stood there for a long time just thinking about choices and sacrifices, about how love sometimes means letting go of everything you thought mattered. An elderly man walked past me, glanced at my face, and stopped. "You all right, son?" I nodded, just remembering something. He smiled knowingly. The good ones are always worth remembering. As I walked back to my car, rain starting to fall again, I felt something shift inside me. Hope, maybe, or just acceptance. Victoria wasn't the untouchable CEO anymore. She was just a person who'd made impossible choices because she cared. And somehow, that made me love her even more. 5 months passed like a fever dream, each day blending into the next. I'd found work at a small startup called Greenwave Energy, a company of 12 people trying to change how buildings use power. Nothing glamorous, but honest work with good people who cared about something bigger than profit margins. My new boss, an engineer named Marcus, never asked about my past. He just gave me projects and trusted me to figure them out. But even surrounded by new routines and different faces, there was always this empty space inside me. One rainy evening in early autumn, I stopped at Martin's Grocery on my way home. I needed coffee and maybe some sense of closure, though I didn't admit that second part to myself. The store smelled the same, like floor cleaner and fresh bread. Music played softly overhead, some pop song I didn't recognize. I grabbed a basket and started walking, not really thinking about where I was going. And then I saw her. Victoria was standing in the wine section, holding a bottle in her hands, reading the label like it contained secrets. She wore jeans and a simple cream sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. No designer clothes. No power suit. Just her. My feet stopped moving. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it, that my brain had finally broken from wanting something too much. But then she turned, like she could feel me watching, and our eyes met. She smiled. Small and uncertain, but real. "Took you long enough," she said softly. My voice came out rough. "You left without saying anything. I didn't know how to say goodbye," she admitted, setting the bottle down. Everything I touched back then turned into headlines and problems. I thought disappearing was the only way to protect what we had left. "We had something left?" I asked, stepping closer. She nodded. "We still do. People walked past us, pushing carts, living their normal lives while mine felt like it was starting over." She looked different without all the armor she used to wear. Younger somehow. More herself. "What happened after you left?" I asked. She took a breath. "I traveled for a while. Spent time in small towns where nobody knew my name. Remembered what it felt like to just exist without performing for anyone." Her voice got quieter. "Turns out I'd forgotten who I was before I became someone people were afraid of." We stood there in silence, just looking at each other. I'd forgotten the exact shade of her eyes, that mix of gray and blue like storm clouds. The way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. "Now it's your turn," she said. "My turn for what?" "To tell me what you've been carrying around." I didn't plan what came next. The words just spilled out. "I was angry at you, for choosing the company, for not fighting harder where I could see it. But then I found out what you actually did. How you gave up everything. I paused, my throat tight, and I realized you fought harder than anyone I've ever known. Just differently than I understood. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying not to cry. And I never stopped loving you, I said. Not for a single day. Not when I was angry. Not when you were gone. Not ever. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she was smiling. You were always too honest. I learned it from you, I said. She laughed, that real laugh I'd only heard a few times, and reached out to take my hand. The same way she had that first night, but completely different. No fear this time.
No desesperación.
Just choice. No more pretending, she whispered. Never again, I promised. We stood there in the middle of the grocery store, two people who'd lost almost everything except each other. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against mine, and for a moment the whole world was just us. When we kissed, it felt like finally breathing right after years of holding air wrong in my lungs. After we walked outside together, the rain had stopped, leaving everything clean and fresh. She slipped her arm through mine as we crossed the parking lot. So what happens now? I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes bright. Now we start over. No job titles. No rules. No pretending to be anything except what we are. When we reached her car, she turned to face me one more time. It's funny, she said. The first time we were here, I asked you to pretend. And now we don't have to, I finished. She smiled, and we got into her car together. As we drove through Seattle, past familiar streets that somehow looked new, I understood something important. Sometimes life has to break you down completely before you can build something real. What started as fear and desperation in a grocery store had become the most honest thing in my life. We didn't have fancy jobs anymore. Didn't have the life everyone expected. But we had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. That night in the grocery store months ago, I thought I was going to lose my job. Instead, I found the person I was supposed to find all along. Sometimes the best partnerships don't start in boardrooms or at fancy events. Sometimes they start in the produce section, with someone scared and honest enough to ask for help. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, they turn into something that lasts forever.